Welcome to episode 306 of No Direction, the No Direction Network Pathfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Costello. This month is all about Battlecry. It's mostly about Battlecry. So this month we've got a Jason Keeley interview, and that interview, full on, it's about Battlecry. I don't even introduce Jason. We just go straight to here's Battlecry, here's what's awesome about it, and we talk about it for 20 minutes. And I also introduced the new fireside chat that I've been wanting to do with community members in the Pathfinder Society. Nope, not in Pathfinder Society, just in Pathfinder community. I talked with Jake from Wisdom Check, and he came on my radar because lately he's been doing builds on his YouTube channel related to all the different archetypes in Battlecry, and I happen to be very impressed and invested in the archetypes in Battlecry. And so I brought him on. We talk a bit about those archetypes, and then we talk about other stuff. So the episode's not all about Battlecry, but it's a lot about Battlecry. Speaking of those archetypes, I just wanted to start off by talking about how impressed I was with the archetypes in Battlecry, and specifically how the variety of archetypes show the different ways that an option can be good. Now, my definition of a good option for an RPG product has changed over the years. It used to be pretty straightforward. If I could see myself using it, it was a good option. Monster that I could see myself throwing at the players, good monster. Feat or spell or piece of equipment that I could see myself given to one of my player characters, good option. Inspired a whole player character concept, great option. But we're not talking about great options here, we're talking about good options. And so over the years, the evolution has broadened to the point that there are some options that I could never see myself taking and would frankly be surprised if I ever saw them show up at the table. And yet I can see them and be like, that is a really good option no one will ever use. To illustrate my point, here are 4 archetypes from Battlecry and how they represent different ways that an option can be good. Let's start with the crossbow infiltrator. Sometimes when you read the name of an option and it's like, that is exactly what I need, and you read and this is the important part, and then you read the mechanics and they live up to the name, that is one of the best feelings in the world. I can forgive an option that has a name that's not quite related to the mechanics, but the mechanics are what I'm looking for. Forgivable, but frustrating. But when the name is exactly what I'm looking for a concept, and then I read the mechanics and it's like, this doesn't apply at all to my build, unforgivable. So, when an option is as advertised, when the name perfectly sums up the mechanics perfectly line up with the name, then you've got a good option. Guess what the crossbow infiltrator uses? A crossbow. Guess what they do with it? They infiltrate. You know right away whether this is for you or not. If you are doing anything with crossbows, crossbow infiltrator should be on your radar. If you have nothing to do with crossbows or infiltrating, you know you can move on. And that's also part of what makes this a good option. Because by being as advertised, you know, without having to skim through the rules, right away it's like, crossbow infiltrator, I'm making a wizard, and then you move on. Whereas if you're like, I'm making a bit of a wizard, but could it be a crossbow infiltrating wizard? Maybe. It has your attention, you know whether you want to read or not. Example number 2, the Eldori Duelist. This is an option that brings lore to life. Sometimes you need system mastery to look at an option and understand its value. Sometimes you need setting mastery, and the Eldori Duelist is one of those. If you've been reading Pathfinder for a long time, you know about the Eldori Sword Lords. They were first introduced in the 2008 campaign setting, and it's just one of the many world-building elements that were peppered throughout that book that Paizo is still extrapolating from to make cool and intriguing options almost 20 years later. So the Eldori Sword Lords are freedom fighters. They are from Brevoy. If there's anyone that tries to come and take over, they are there to meet them with the edge of a sword. Now, first edition introduced an archetype for the Eldori Sword Lord. Sorry, it was actually a prestige class, but that undermined the idea that you're a sword lord. Like, you could qualify for it at 4th, 5th level, and that doesn't deliver on the lore. So what I really appreciate about the Eldori Duelist is that it saves the Eldori Sword Lord name for a 20th level feat. So you could be a duelist, you could be on your way to being one of these sword lords, but you need to complete your journey and make a 20th level character before you qualify for being an Eldori Sword Lord. So it's cool because it means that from 2nd level, when you can take this archetype, you could be like, I want to be a sword lord one day. So you get all of the prestige of being associated with the sword lords, but you don't water down the term. Yes, it's semantic, but it brings value. Like that is, flavor is semantics, and this is semantics done well. What I also like about lore brought to life options is that no one else can do them. Any other fantasy RPG can do a duelist or a swashbuckler. And in fact, Pathfinder has a duelist, non-Eldori duelist archetype, and it has the swashbuckler class. And what separates this from those and from what anyone else can publish is that this is the lore. This is the world. This is something that you may have read about in a Pathfinder novel or a comic or just reading over some flavor text. And now you want to be a part of it, and you can be. And you cannot do that anywhere but in Pathfinder. Example number 3, the field propagandist. I will say, the art really caught my attention. This was one of the best pieces of art in the book because it's so fun and it really brings home the point of the person that goes out there and spreads rumors, spreads misinformation to get a point across and to give yourselves an edge over, your enemies, your rivals. But it's built around an exploration activity, which, totally valid part of the game, just happens to be a part of the game that GMs tend to handwave. Like, more than even, I feel like GMs handwave over exploration more than even downtime, because downtime sums up so much time in so few words that GMs will be like, all right, so what kind of downtime activity are you doing? But exploration groups will often be so into what they're doing that they forget that they're in exploration mode and just kind of do it a little more narratively. So the field propagandist dedication gives you a new exploration activity, and all it does is change the attitude, on a successful roll, change the attitude people in an urban city or a population has. So it implies that this exploration cannot just be out in the woods or in a dungeon, that you specifically have to be exploring in an urban environment where there are people there who will care about what you're saying. And then you can change their attitude towards another faction, a group. It's pretty broad, at least who it applies against, but it's so specific. And then there is one of the feats is it takes 7 days of downtime, and it does basically an enhanced version of what you can do with your basic dedication. So yeah, I'm kind of making fun of the field propagandists. So how do I justify calling this a good option? Because the mechanics work. It is an exercise in design. Someone took the rules, took the concept, and did exactly how they have to be implemented in this way. This is an option I will never play. This is an option that I will never expect to see at the table. This is an option I am happy exists. And I really enjoyed reading it over, not just for the flavor, but for how that flavor was brought to life through a Pathfinder 2e mechanical lens. And finally, example number 4, the captain. This is a game changer. Battlecry includes 11 archetypes. 10 of them are grouped together in the archetype section. And then there's one of them that you have to wait a little bit to get to because it needs 10 pages of a subsystem designed first before you can even understand how this archetype works. It's the captain, and you get followers. Almost every single captain archetype feat either gives you more followers or improves the followers you already have. So if you just want the one, you can just dip into it with the dedication and get your loyal subject. But if you want to be the one that is coordinating whole groups, you can do that with by fully committing to the captain. The reason I call this game changer, the reason I think this is a good option is that I can see myself taking this archetype and I'm mentally building the character, and I have not picked a class or an ancestry or a background. I just know that there is enough to the captain that I can make multiple completely different characters without even considering the base options. It's also a game changer because it takes up so much space. Like, this is almost a class. It is an archetype that rounds up. And in the future, when Paizo announces a new book, I think people will be saying things like, okay, but what's the captain of this book? Or what is the super archetype? We don't have a technical name for it. It is still technically an archetype, but it is an archetype unlike any archetype we've ever seen before. And it will change how people design and think about designing for this game, as well as how they build characters and how much weight an archetype can have on their build. What's funny about the captain is that it wasn't even on my radar when I picked up Battlecry. I got into this book expecting a new ancestry, 2 new classes, a skirmish system, and everything else in there I was just expecting to fall under this broad category of other war stuff. So for the captain to be the thing that I am thinking about the most since putting that book down, for it to be overshadowing a lot of Battlecry's big selling points, that is why this is a game changer. That is why this is a good option. One of the best options in the book. Speaking of Battlecry's selling points, let's move on to my interview with Paizo developer and Battlecry's design lead, Jason Keeley. Jason!
Jeez.
Battlecry!
Ja! Oh. That
Battlecry.
gave me a mild heart attack, Brian. Why?
Yes!
Why did you do that to me?
Because you put an exclamation point in the title, so that is how it has to be said.
Love exclamation points in the titles. That's all I got to tell you.
Is this the first Paizo or Pathfinder source book with an exclamation point in it?
It's the first Pathfinder thing. It's been in Starfinder a couple times now, but
All right.
this is the first, as far as I know. Oh no, hold on a second. Actually, I might be wrong about that. Rasputin Must Die might have an exclamation point in it. I'm not entirely certain, but that would be a place to put an exclamation mark for sure.
No, that could be whispered, like Rasputin must die.
I mean, it's true, but you know, of all the things, if there is one out there, I wouldn't be surprised if that one had one.
Now, as someone who hates exclamation points in titles, mostly because when I'm writing a sentence and that word's in the middle, and then the word processor's like, oh, exclamation point ends a sentence, and then I've got to fight with my word processors like auto formatting, justify why Battlecry has an exclamation point in the title.
For the excitement, as you just demonstrated, obviously, you know, you want to shout the name of this book because it is a battle cry. It is just that. It is, you know, it's to set it apart from the feat of the same name.
Oh, I hadn't even considered that.
Which is also has a space in it, but you know, we can do what we want. It's words. Words are, we can have fun with them.
All right, so Battlecry is the latest Pathfinder 2e hardcover sourcebook from Paizo. And, you know, obviously it's a very martial-focused book, but from your point of view, when you were trying to pitch it or when it was pitched to you, what is Battlecry?
Yeah, it's our source book for all things sort of war related. Like you said, it's a very martial focused book, but it's also got some stuff in there for people who want to be a little sneaky about war or, you know, do some more magic. Is plenty of stuff in there. It's the kind of kickoff for our Hellfire Crisis event. Meta event that's going to be taking place over the next year or so, where Andoran and Cheliax go to war. So this, in a way, is almost a prequel to that. You don't need to worry about the Hellfire Crisis event to use Battlecry. But it is a good jumping off point for that whole thing. So we talk a little bit about it. We talk a little bit about what's going to happen, what's happening in the regions, all the sort of fallout from the War of Immortals and on the mortal plane of things. And some other wars that are kind of going around. But for the most part, you know, we've got 2 new classes. We've got a new ancestry, a bunch of archetypes, spells, items, all the kind of stuff you would expect in a hardcover RPG that can be used in any campaign, really. But if you really want to go heavy on the war stuff, it's got subsystems and fun new stuff for just that thing.
Now, you said you don't need to be playing the AP to appreciate Battlecry, but does the reverse apply? Do you need Battlecry to run the AP?
You will probably, yes. There will be some parts in the first AP Hellbreakers, which is coming out next year. Although it is set now. It basically takes place right after the Battle of Hellnight Hill, which was a special event that we had at Gen Con. And the sort of that was the kickoff between the full war between Andoran and Cheliax. It takes place right after that. And at some point there will be some skirmish encounters for that in the sort of later bits. I was going to say volumes, but it's one book, which we just recently announced. I have to remember that I can talk about that now. Those are in, you know, if you want to buy into the spirit of what's going on in Hellbreakers, you'll want to use that skirmish encounter system. But again, those encounters don't, like, you can kind of, you know, if you want to mod them to be just sort of, hey, fight some troops. You'll just have to bump down the difficulty a little bit for just a party of 4 or 5, you know, regular players and them not commanding troops on their own. So, I kind of maybe got ahead of myself there to explain what the skirmish encounter subsystem is, which I can do right now if you want.
Yes, go for it. Skirmish encounters.
So, the skirmish encounter subsystem is something that you can bolt on to your game to really give that feeling of leading a bunch of troops into battle. It is definitely it's less abstract than say sort of like a overarching war subsystem, which you might want to use victory points or something like that for that. But it's definitely boots on the ground. You are in charge of a troop unit, which is basically a creature that like a swarm, but for bigger things. We've had them in the past. You probably have seen them around. We're going to have more of them. There's plenty more in this book. And you are giving them sort of commands in it, but you get to use your own character in it. So you're not necessarily stepping aside from your barbarian raging to say, oh, let's figure out the best way to marshal troops to go here and there, right? No, you're there, you're going along with them, and you're usually fighting troops on the opposite side with their own commanders. And you'll have an objective, either like get from point A to point B, or kill that enemy commander, or instead of just sort of like fighting to the end, because troops have morale in this subsystem. And when you kill a bunch of them and they don't have a commander, there's a very good chance you rout them and they kind of run away, basically. And it's really if you know how to play Pathfinder 2e, you don't have to like learn. You almost don't have to learn anything new to do the skirmish subsystem. It is that's the brilliance of it. I think you can thank Logan Bonner for it. How elegant it is, in my opinion.
Yeah, everything you said, I just want to thank you for, because any time in the past that I've seen role playing games, and even Pathfinder has done this in first
Yeah,
edition, they try and implement giant warfare, and you just lose your character into the swarm
yeah,
of bodies, and then it's a board game with
yeah,
some role playing elements. Whereas this,
yeah.
it's very easy to play with the same focus on the characters. Sure, they're
Hmm.
spread out across different troops, but it still feels like characters first, then the war and the troops and whatnot
Yeah,
are grafted onto them. It's in addition to, not instead of. And that is
exactly.
exactly how I want a subsystem like this. And I've always wanted a subsystem like this, and I'm glad I finally have one.
Yeah, again, Logan Bonner came up with this. We did some, play testing in house for a bit, trying some different things, and we eventually hit on this sort of idea of like, in a way, it's the same game, although now you have five actions instead of three, because you have to give some actions to the troop, and you can decide whether your troop gets three or two actions, and you take two or three actions, but you are part of the troop all the time too. Like you move with them, you don't have to worry about like them getting too far away or commanding them to move. Right, you're always moving with them. You're always inside them. You can attack from sort of anywhere in that space, and troops are huge, so that's a big space. The downside is that anyone can attack you as if you were in any one of those spaces. And obviously, if you're going against a troop, area effects are going to be bad news. But you have them too, as your wizard might have one. You can blast an area effect against troops, and troops are interestingly, uniquely suited to fighting each other, because they essentially do area effects as their main thing. So when troops bang against each other, they the numbers go down very fast.
I also like just the broad range of troops that you've included in here. I think the Ratfolk Shank Squad might be
This is
my
a fun
favorite
one.
name, but I
Yeah,
like
that's
you've
good
got
ones.
undead, you've got giant creatures, you've got more standard troops that you would expect. So all the different ancestries, or most of them,
Yeah, yeah.
demons, devils, like everything is in here, and it made this section fun to read. On top
No, good.
of giving so many new options for the direction that you could take that kind of encounter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was sort of like I knew that I wanted to have more. Yeah, we were gonna use troops in some fashion as part of this skirmish subsystem before I knew what it was, because we were working on it all at the same time. I was like, well, we gotta have to have more troops. It is also a war book, right? We're gonna have some of them, being introduced a little bit in NPC core. We got some real basic stuff and some remastered, like the Hell Knight Cavalry Brigade, I think remastered in NPC core, and but there weren't that many, and we're gonna see some of the sort of other remastered ones, skeleton, no, the zombie shambler horde, right? Like that's a classic one that's been around for a bit. But I wanted more. We wanted more stuff. It's got to have more stuff. You got more soldiers, higher levels, some stuff that you might not think of. I sort of asked my freelancers, give me some stuff, and they were like, what about a bunch of red caps? I'm like, okay, sure. Let's have that. That sounds could be fun. And making sure that we also had, a bunch of druids and a bunch of apprentice mages, a bunch of monks, for instance, kind of fighting alongside that. You could have a kind of varied and interesting kind of way to think, because all of these troop stat blocks can be used for good or against your PC, players, and in any way you like.
All right. This is the last chapter, though, so let's go right back to the front
Sure.
and let's start going through
Hmm.
the big bullet points and the big selling points for this book. And I have to say, like, I've kind of been following the general reception to this book, and it
Yeah.
feels like everyone loves every big bullet point for this book. Like, the selling points are super popular here.
I'm really pleased. I was honestly just because this is the first big book that I've helmed as a designer for Paizo in the Pathfinder line. Anyway, I was never really technically a designer when I was a Starfinder on the Starfinder team, but this is the first big book I've helmed in the Pathfinder line, and I was obviously always a little worried. I'm not sure how,
Sure.
you're never sure how the reception's going to be. We had a little bit of a rocky reception for the playtest, at least that the Guardian did, and that was the class that I wrote. So I was just like, oh, biting my nails. But we took all that playtest feedback in and pumped out something that I think people really really like, and I'm really happy that people like it.
All right, let's start with the new ancestry in the book. There's only one
Yes,
new ancestry. It's
yes.
it's rare ancestry. It is the Jotunborn, and this
Hmm.
is probably the RPG option that I misjudged just based on my expectations. I was just expecting the beef, just a
Yeah.
big, violent. If you want to be the biggest character in the party, you take a Jotunborn. I was not expecting them to be interplanar guardians and have these like conjuration teleportation abilities
Yeah.
and this like silk screen
Yeah, they're
imagery all throughout.
tattoos
Yeah.
basically, not tattoos, but they're weavings in their body. Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. I start when I started with this book, I was like, what would be a good ancestry for this kind of a book? We don't have like a half giant or a giant kind of ancestry, we know, and we've been playing with larger ancestries with the Minotaur and the Centaur and stuff like that in previous books. So I was like, now's the time that we could get a big beefy boy in here. I was like, okay, let's do that. That was sort of my beginning point for this. And then, of course, I wanted to sort of give it to some as an author, give it to someone who would do it right. And that person, of course, is Luis Loza, our creative director, figure something out. So him and I and our concept artist Kent Hamilton just had a couple meetings on the clock about like what are these people? Because Luis wanted to go a little bit more in, not just giants. We needed to figure out what it was because they're the in Pathfinder the giant. Giants
Creature
range from
type.
everything. The giant creature type kind of ranges all over the board, right? Obviously, trolls kind of count as that, but like even just sort of like the more quote unquote human giants are all over the board. Marsh giants and stone giants and all that sort of stuff, right? Like, and we didn't think it would be super interesting or very cohesive to just say that's one of your heritages, right? Like, pick that. And he came up with this idea, and he'd sort of been hinting at the idea of these sort of like larger than life custodians of the material plane, not what it's called anymore, the universe. And sort of took that and ran with it, and we sort of talked out of the can. What do they look like? They should be big, and we talked a little bit about what makes them distinct. And we got with this idea of what if they have these cool like not tattoos. It's just body art essentially, right? Body modification, and that's where it's going. And then I let Luis sort of go nuts on the what they can do, and I think it came out cool and interesting, and yeah,
Let me just list like three of my favorite things about them.
sure, love
First of
it.
all, is the fact that their origin has them as like these interplanar beings that are now spending more time on
Hmm.
Galarian means that the fact that they've never been in any of my campaigns up until now, it
Yeah,
explains that away, which is always
yeah.
one of the problems when you're introducing an ancestry that has no lore, like no
Yeah.
no lore connect or no connection to the lore.
Right. If
So I
we had
like
just
that.
sort of started with like you're a half giant kind of, or maybe kind of thing, it could have been a versatile heritage that you were half giant. Like we haven't really seen a ton of those around, also. So, whereas minotaurs and centaurs, obviously they exist. We've had them before as monsters, and that makes sense now of their ancestry. So yeah, we wanted to go with a little bit of something that was new.
All right. Second thing I like is that because of the way that ancestries, are built based on their feet, or at least what your version of that ancestry can do, is that if you do just want the big beefy boy, you can just take the fighter ones.
Yeah.
Like at every level, I believe there's a
Hmm.
viable option for just
Yeah.
being the meat in the party.
Hmm. Yeah.
I guess like just the third thing is I just love the vibe. There's just something about the art direction and
Yeah.
the mysticism around them that I again was not expecting and became the thing that I was appreciating the most and felt like I was really exploring as I was reading through this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing that you were talking about how like whether I pitched this book in general or not. I didn't. I was sort of like came on and they were like, we need to have this book, and I was like, I'll do this. And in a way, like I'm not necessarily the fan, like the biggest fan of like war stories. I mean, obviously, I love the when the Lord of the Rings war, orcs and humans sort of fight each other. That's all super epic. That's the sort of, but that's my in. I'm not necessarily a big watcher of like war movies and that kind of thing, and I don't have obviously any kind of like military experience personally. So I had to come out some stuff with that made it a little more unique, right? And that's the reason, to talk about in a similar vein, how when I was the lead for Attack of the Swarm, also exclamation point, it was a war, it's going to be a war focused thing, but of course it gets weird halfway through, and that's because I just didn't want to do a war thing for 6 volumes.
Well, most APs, especially the 6 volume ones, they get weird at some point.
Yeah, that kind of got to.
All right, let's talk about. There's two new classes in this, and they're both like classic tropes of role playing game classes, and yet not something that we really had represented in Pathfinder before. So the first one is the commander. I love the commander. Commander is the first thing that I expect to get to the table from this book, or at least the thing that I'm most excited to get to the table at this out of this book is the commander.
Yeah,
And,
nice.
I like that it's an intelligence-based leader. Usually, when it comes to leaders, we think charisma-based. So the fact that this one leads with the brain is cool. I love what it does with warfare lore. That it's taking this skill, which is one of the the lore skills are the more abstract ones, and it gives GMs a little bit of leeway, GMs and players. But here it codifies some new abilities that are very much tied to the theme of this, and so it makes sense nobody else can do this, but it makes sense that the commanders can do this.
Yeah. There's no base skill that kind of fits into being a commander. Diplomacy, intimidation, kind of. Then that would be the charisma base. Maybe society, kind of thinking about like knowing stuff about war, but really just narrowing it down to warfare lore, I think was a real fun move.
And it also reminds me, like, back in the 3.0, 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons days, there was spellcraft, which was the thing of someone's casting a spell, what does it do? And my friend Matt would always be like, why isn't there fighting craft? Why can't I figure out this feat that these warriors are doing? And that's exactly what the commander can do.
Yeah. We had, you're saying that there weren't necessarily things like this. We had to kind of thread some stuff that did kind of exist. Like we had the martial archetype that exists that kind of has this sort of vibe, but not really. And it is more just sort of like, hey, I'm here. And Cavalier kind of also, but that's more sort of like, riding essentially, right? But taking this, just finding out what those things don't do and moving that towards what the commander can do was a good move, I think. And just sort of like this idea of like thinking of them as, in a weird way, almost as a martial spellcaster. You've got these sort of quote unquote martial spellcasting cantrips that you can do. You pick a couple of them as you do your daily preparations, and you can just do them. They call it, they do whatever many actions they do, and they do what they do. And some of them, maybe some you need to change some stuff out for a different type of battlefield. So that was the sort of basis of where we came from to decide that.
Well, and it has the similar imagery of the wizard hitting the books to figure out which spells they need for that day. The commander hitting the library, hitting like his shelf full of tactical not novels, but tactical
folios,
manuals,
tactical
folios.
Yeah.
And so that's where the tactics come from. And you do memorize the tactics that are applicable to the day after learning some of them. So there's like multiple levels of customization to this class.
Yeah.
And to the point that, I was done reading through the tactics, and then I was like, oh, right, there's feats. There's more to this class. There's more options to how you build your character.
As always, yeah. A lot of fun stuff in there too. Obviously, like some stuff that's like, have a horse. Yes. Obvious stuff that you might have as a commander, but like some sort of fun like things that you can do mix it up with the tactics a little bit.
And then we already brought up, so the Guardian is the class that you designed. So forgive me when I say it's not my cup of tea. So I'm hoping, it's just not the kind of class that I can see myself playing, but I do really appreciate how taunt works in that it doesn't force a character to do anything, but it does penalize them for not doing the thing that you are nudging them towards.
Yeah, that was a big design sort of stumbling block. We kind of wanted to make sure, because it's never fun to take away choice, even from the GM. The GM still wants to have their monster have their tactics and whatever. But we also wanted to be like, this is a taunt, and it should also, we wanted to work on everything. So it's not just you can only yell at people who have brains, right? You can taunt, get the attention of something that doesn't, zombies and oozes like still perceive the world, right? So if you can get their attention, essentially, if you want to.
I mean, is there
Um,
a zombie piece of media that doesn't have some scene where somebody is the decoy?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we had to make sure that that worked that way, and kind of similar to what we did with the commander, we had to thread the line between like champion is kind of tanky, but also we had Bastion and the other one, which I suddenly can't remember. There's like a shield based archetype and a real armor sentinel, I think, armor based archetype. And we had to kind of thread those. And so there's some similarities, of course, but the main thing being like this is I wanted this class to be the sort of armor class,
So I
not
get that.
necessarily
Well,
not
I
necessarily
get
the shield class. Sorry,
you go.
good. Okay. Not necessarily the shield class, but just armor. Yeah, sort of focusing on that. But good.
So I get the need for everything to have its own niche, but I'm surprised that you take so much care for archetypes, which just feels like if a class comes up taking up that space, the class outranks archetypes and it should get what it needs.
It should get what it needs, which is why there are some similarities between. You might see some similar feats between Bastion and Sentinel and Guardian, and they should. But we also want to make sure that in the a new class kind of can exist in the ecosystem of the game and not necessarily 100% make an archetype defunct. Like, because people still have their characters and they want to play them, and maybe you want to be a Sentinel monk. What a weird combination because you really shouldn't be wearing armor when you're a monk. But something like that, still exists without you having to necessarily like take a whole class. So it's a tough line to thread, and the more classes we put out, the more archetypes we put out, the close, the narrower that hole that the needle hole gets.
All right, so now I already said this is not a class I am likely to play. So let's say I sit at a table and I have to play like a pre-gen of this class. It's the only one
Okay.
that's still available. Sell me on it. Convince me that I'm going to have a good time.
Okay, so well, what you're going to do is you're going to be the hero of the story here because of at least for your party, because you're going to be left and right taking damage that's meant for other characters. You're going to be making, hoping that the monsters attack you, and they will most likely be missing because you'll have probably the best armor class that you can have in the game. So you're going to be both being the best friend of the party and the worst friend of the GM because they're gonna be like, no, I wanted to damage somebody. No, you're damaging me. So you get a little more almost narrative control in some minor ways of what's going on in a fight, and you can really turn the tide of just sort of keeping everybody alive. It's pre-healing. You don't have to have a healer because you're taking that damage and you're mitigating all of it, all because you have that damage reduction, resistance from like level one, and you won't necessarily have to worry about at the end of the fight you'll have more hit points and you can get on to the next fight even faster. That's
All
that's
right.
that's a pitch. That's a pitch. I don't know if it'll get you, but that's a pitch. I've been
I
actually
do
thinking a
believe
little
I
bit
would
of
have fun with this. I just probably
yes.
would not. I don't know. Unless somebody nudged me in that direction, I probably wouldn't build my own. But I could definitely see myself enjoying this character.
Want to play one now.
Oh, okay.
I just sort of, we did the testing obviously as we go, but I haven't like played it in a campaign. And frankly, I think I'm gonna bring an oldie back. I would make Ogdrin a guardian
Yes.
now. I had him as a fighter, and I had him as the sort of I think Bastion fight archetype when we had him in 2E. But now I would make him a guardian 100%.
Shoot, could Xavier be a commander? Could we? Is there something here?
Ooh, there
Right?
could be something there. Yeah, I like Xavier as a commander.
The only thing is Xavier's not the brightest. He was
Yeah, fair enough.
definitely
He
the
was
charismatic guy.
he was the charismatic guy. Fair enough. Yeah.
All right, so now looking at the rest of the book, like it's loaded with new spells, loaded with siege engines, rituals,
Yep.
weapons, mundane, magical. We're not going to go into every single one of them, but
Sure. Yeah.
if there's anything that you really think is a game changer or really thinks like we cannot not talk about this option among all those sections, is there anything that jumps to mind?
Let's talk about followers.
Oh,
I think this
yes.
is also a big thing too. This is another sort of pivot in the design space where we haven't gone before, but it's super familiar because it works exactly like an animal companion. You can have now a guy, a friend, a medic on your side, a shield bearer, an archer, who you command with one of your actions, and they do two actions. It's they progress on their own. You don't need to spend your own money to equip them. They are getting paid by someone else, or you can work with that how your GM how that's exactly getting worked out. But they are your squire essentially in a lot of ways. And you can once you now. You've got to do this through the captain archetype, which is new archetype sort of for this. But it all works out, it all works out exactly the same. You pick, they advance. You can pick they get sort of new abilities and obviously skills ups and proficiencies in their weapons and stuff like that. So if you know how to do an animal companion, you can do a follower.
When it's also like you said that you need to get the captain archetype. I'll just say the segment before this one is all about how much I love the archetypes in this book and like trying to
Yes,
extrapolates into bigger topic. That's why I'm not covering them again here.
fair
The
enough. Yeah.
captain's worth revisiting because it feels like it's bigger than an archetype. It almost feels like a class. Is there a reason that you, instead of trying to expand it into a class, you shrunk it into an archetype?
Just because the besides like druid is not just an animal companion class, right? It is something you can have as a druid. There was no sort of it's possible we could have maybe thrown that in there as a feat for commander, for instance. Now you get a follower, right? But just sort of keeping it sort of self-contained because not every game, not every campaign is going to work with this way. Not every group is going to enjoy the idea of bossing around a person instead of bossing around an animal. So I could see why people might not want this in their game. And so that sort of it kind of segments it to one side so that you can add it if you want it. There it is. You can have it, and you can go on and do the people hear like followers and leadership type feats, and they get scared. Probably with good reason for how it's been in the past, but this is just way more self-contained. You can, though it does have the captain archetype does have a feat that lets you get more sort of like cohorts essentially that don't come into a fight with you, but they stay behind and big you up and maybe do some downtime stuff with you. But yeah, I think we just kind of wanted to keep it off again, sort of similar to the sort of skirmish subsystem. It's there if you need it, but you don't have to necessarily worry about it being in every game if it's a class, say.
And I know you said that the followers are kind of locked to the captain class, to the
Yeah.
captain archetype rather. The captain dedication gets you a follower. So if you're just
Yes.
interested in a follower, you might as
Just
well
get one.
take that. The same as taking a leadership feat, but then if you also want
You-
further
You're gonna
archetype feats.
Yeah, you're gonna want to take the other ones too to level them up so they remain, it like an animal companion, it's gonna be feat intensive for you to sort of keep them on the right level for you, on the right power curve essentially. But doesn't mean but again, it opens up a big design space. It doesn't mean that there can't be more new followers in future books. There could be another type of archetype that comes up that says, hey, you get a specific type of follower. Maybe we say, oh, here are undead followers for maybe even though that's maybe I think we might have done undead. We've done undead animal companions, I think, in Book of the Dead, but like a person, a zombie, or whatever. You could, sort of pivot that way if you wanted to.
Necro
Um,
captain.
a necro captain, exactly.
So Jason, I loved this book. This was super
Thank
fun
you.
to read,
Yeah.
and the options really like sparked a lot of just really sparked my imagination. What is it that you are proudest of this book?
I am. Oh, gosh, I'm proud. I'm actually kind of proud of the interstitial fiction, for one
Oh,
thing.
okay.
I'm pretty proud about that because as I was going forward through it and writing it up, I realized something. I'm not going to spoil it exactly what's going on. I managed to sort of like do a thing at the end that ties some stuff in from the beginning that I think was kind of neat of me because of the weird limited space that I had. And like I've spread here, but the one at the end is 4 pages. And I had more room to kind of go like, dear reader, maybe you may have noticed that I stopped mentioning this thing. Well, that was on purpose because it was a secret, kind of stuff. So I'm a little proud of that little twist I did at the end there. As a sort of as a writing flourish. Um, but also, let's see. I'm not going to flip through here and mention something else, something a little more mechanical. I'm
No, no, you
super
could totally be
happy.
proud of
I'm
the
very proud of
narrative
it. I'm
device
very
along
proud.
through it. Yeah.
I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the idea that sort of like, oh, this war correspondent from Absalom is trying to figure out what's going on and stuff that's happening and hearing rumors and taking a trip. Just a very kind of like trying to get that war journalism kind of feel to it in a fantasy setting, which is cool. I enjoy the art for the field propagandist because I think
Yes.
it's hilarious. I really like the idea of someone just being like, hee hee. And I'm not saying I'm proud, but I do want to mention how many musical instruments are in this book. It's more
Okay.
musical instruments in this book than you think there should be, because the sort of the idea of the drums or the pipes of war, the a battle fife. Think about the Revolutionary War. There's always that guy with the fife in the background. Like instruments, in a way, music in a lot of way kind of goes along with war in some fashion, at least in sort of at least um, older stories of war. Although every Vietnam movie that comes out has a banger soundtrack, so I think music and fighting kind of go along with each other.
I don't have it handy, but
Hmm.
at my first PaizoCon, I sat down for a paint and take with the Reaper folks, and I
Ooh.
made a dwarf bagpiper. And
Piper.
yeah, that just, oh man, I think I might finally get that character to the table. That was just a fun thing to
Yeah.
paint at the time. Things have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
changed now.
There are at least two different types of war bagpipes in this book.
It's important.
It's important, war bagpipes, Braveheart, that kind of stuff.
And you know what? When people hear bagpipes, sometimes they just want to fight.
They just, I didn't put a war didgeridoo in there, which may have, or no, not a vuvuzela would be probably the most aggravating instrument to play for at your enemies.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason. This is Battlecry. It's the latest Pathfinder 2e hardcover source book from Paizo. It's available now at paizo.com and your friendly local gaming store.
Thank you, Ryan. Dismissed.
Jake, I feel like I should warn you. I am very allergic to cats, and so far I'm fine, but I would not put it past me for somehow this conversation for me to break out in hives. So if my eyes get puffy, if I start sniffling a lot, just know it's not you I'm allergic to, it's loot.
Oh, okay. And the most allergic one is Gast. He has all of these fluffy pants on him,
Sure.
and his tail is just Allergen City.
So I have the worst combination of superpower and weakness because my superpower is that cats love me. I will
Aw.
go over to a house, there will be a cat there, they will hang out with me, the owner will be like, he hates everybody, it's so strange. And I don't know if they know I'm allergic and this is how they hate me, or,
It seems so.
yeah. So anyway, and I want to love them, but I can't. I
That's
guess,
sad.
yeah.
It
This
seems like
part of me
most
wants to
TTR
love them, but everything else does not.
I was allergic to cats when I was a kid, and so
And you
I
grew out of
had to.
it?
Pardon?
You grew out of
Yeah,
it? I
I grew
thought
out
it only went the other way. I thought people just got
last
more allergic.
last year. I just grew out of being allergic to eating tomatoes too.
You
Just
see, you've got a
changes.
cool superpower.
Yeah, evolution.
All right. You're Jake. You're from Wisdom Check. Why don't you tell some people? Let's start with your channel. What is it about Wisdom Check? What's your niche within the Pathfinder influencer community?
Weird. Seriously, I don't. Okay, so I like occult topics.
Mhm.
I am a practicing witch. I enjoy things that are off the wall, and I can draw on my own occult experience to display different aspects of how to roleplay a thing or stories that would work with a thing. Thaumaturges and witches are probably my favorite classes because I relate most to both of those.
Mhm.
But also, I personally love understanding more about uh, human psychosocial communication issues, and I enjoy understanding psychology of people in general. So all of my characters that I build feel real. So I make backstories as a major part of any of my builds.
Which is interesting because some of the builds that I've watched you make have been pretty wacky.
Did you read? Did you watch the one that was the Kitsune Investigator?
No, I didn't, but I will check that out. Especially somebody on the network, Alex, is the biggest Kitsune fan I know.
It is. I think I mislabeled it because I was trying to grab people from D&D 5e at the time. And so I think I just used words that don't come up much for people that are playing Pathfinder. But the idea was sort of taking a battle artificer from 5e and putting it into Pathfinder 2 and making it as interesting as possible. So
Okay.
the Kitsune has a construct companion, but there's still an investigator. So it's just interesting that way.
Yeah, I was trying to like work out in my head. It's like, okay, from the artificer to investigator, that is an interesting path. But like maybe not the most direct one. I would go with inventor probably, but I
Yeah.
started to piece together the logic of how you got there.
The reason I pointed out is because I use um, a classic writing trope of the hidden self and go into the psychology of this character and how their other side comes out in roleplay and sort of grates against them.
Okay, and Kitsune is an excellent ancestry to do that with, them being dual or even tri-identitied.
Hmm.
So the builds that I first saw you making were the ones tied to Battlecry. I actually cannot tell you when you first started showing up in my feed, but I started noticing your builds when it came to Battlecry, which, you know, is what this episode is all about. And specifically, I was a really big fan of the archetypes. So what was it about the archetypes that drew you to them? Because are you making a build per archetype in the book?
Um,
You feel like you're on that
yeah,
trajectory.
it seems like it, but I'm just not going to be able to get to it because they keep coming out with new books and I want to talk about them too.
Yeah, fair.
No, I tend to cover every archetype that is either requested of someone in my Discord or interests me in particular. And so the necrologist, I did an archetype of, but not a build for, because I kind of hate how it's presented, not the mechanics of it, but how it's presented. So it seems to be trying to focus on you have a big necrotic undead pet, but that's not the mechanics and how the function of it actually plays out. It plays out more of like a repeatable AoE. So, okay, it's useful, it is cool, but it's not a necromancer. And that seems to be how it's trying to sell itself. So I'm not a fan of the package as a whole. If you want to use it for making a big AoE over and over again, cool. It does that. It's void damage. It can even like grapple people and knock them down and trip and stuff. Cool. But for the captain opened my eyes to so many new possibilities because I've wanted to in the past create. Have you played Vampire the Masquerade?
Not in 20 years.
But you have.
Yes, I have.
Okay, so you're familiar with the Zamisi.
Whoa, remind me.
Fleshcrafter vampires. So the fleshcrafter vampires, they are disturbed and demented. They distort flesh into all sorts of weird shapes. They can make like monsters that are like 40 feet tall. But what I wanted to do is translate their base ability into Pathfinder 2. And by that, I mean some like pet creature that you can customize and modify to have like bone spears, to be 10 feet tall, super beautiful wings, whatever. And just be able to like have, I guess I really like piecemeal construction. So it really feels like your own. And so now that the captain has given permission to use the captain archetype to create followers of almost any ancestry and creature type you can think of, that's next on my list.
So there were two of your builds that I watched and they really stood out. And one of them was that, and part of the reason that I really liked your breakdown of the captain was it was clearly like really rules driven, but you also give yourself permission to ignore some of the rules that you thought were a dumb restriction, or like just like, oh, if we squint, this rule works this way, and then this whole build is possible. So like you're here for the rules, you're here for Pathfinder Second Edition, but you're here for the fun and the joy of the system.
Totally. If you can twist the system to play out the fantasies in your head, isn't that kind of what a role playing game is for?
Yes, actually, that's a perfect summary of it. The other build that really caught my attention was your Iridian Choirmaster, mainly because you seemed to dislike the archetype completely. It was something that was requested of you, and every step of the way you reminded people what it was about this archetype you disliked, and yet I still found it a very engaging and overall positive viewing experience. And
Yeah,
that is a challenge.
it is, but it has uses. Just because they're not uses that I would use them for doesn't mean it's useless. Like people can appreciate um okay, I know nothing about cars. So if anybody asks me to work on a car with somebody who's a mechanic, I'll be like, well, that's your job. I will watch. I appreciate these skills. I know nothing about what I'm doing. Which one's oil? I'm not sure. So it's sort of just appreciating, I guess I guess it's sort of like appreciating the diversity in society, but also in a role-playing game. Like you can make, okay, so I have a lot of experience with varying types of psychologies. I've done a lot of research on it. It was my major, but I didn't graduate as a psychologist, so I'm not claiming that, but I love psychology. So I have made characters that have a particular bent, and then I sort of twist ancestries and heritages to fit them. Like I made a person who was a gnome that was in a factory fire and basically died, almost died, and was rescuing her fellow gnomes from the blaze and got rescued by Kanrasu, and they rebuilt her body. So in this was before the rule of you can take different heritages as a custom ancestry. And so I made her a gnome, but heritage Kanrasu. So like part of her is wood and she can take plant feats, and she has a sword that grows out of her, and she has the outlook of a Kanrasu being Eon and focusing on the patience and the meditative qualities of a Kanrasu. You can make anything you want. And so why wouldn't you do weird stuff, especially if you have a story-driven reason to do so?
So that you are reminding me of Walter, the character that I played for oh shoot, what was it? It was their like very gothic horror or like Universal Monsters horror one. It's a first edition adventure. In any case, yeah. So his whole town turned into undead, and so he had to flee. He was the only one that was left not undead. Joined up with some gnomes, and they introduced him to the Ripsaw glaive, which is basically a Pathfinder chainsaw. And so then he went back to his town and just like went full Evil Dead Ash
Yes,
on all
Ash.
of the undead that were in there. And yeah, so my entire PC was very much trying to recreate Ash in these Universal monster movies, and it was a like it was tied to the gnome ancestry, this weapon. And I was like, I play a lot of gnomes. I don't feel like playing a gnome this time. And so I found the story that made that character work the way I wanted it to.
Totally perfect. And then you can pick whatever classes. Weird feats like deviant feats are so useful to slot in for these purposes because they require class feats, but they don't require a commitment like an archetype does. And fit in whatever kind of odd backgrounds or extra spells that you can pick up different ways so that you can just flavor whatever you're doing mechanically as whatever you're seeking.
Now, I'm sorry, you only have half my attention because it's really bothering me that I don't remember the name of that adventure path. And so I'm just quickly going over the Paizo site. Where is it? No, I've gone too far. Carrion Crown. There we go.
Oh, was that PF1?
That's PF1, yeah. That is
Okay.
and I have not even played through that many. Like this one, we played through all 6 books, and I have not done that with too many adventure paths. So it was really bothering me that I did not remember the name of this adventure path.
Oh, that makes sense because you dedicated a large portion of your brain at the time.
Exactly. How about you? Do you play adventure paths, homebrew?
It varies. I think that if I have the perfect group, it's pretty much all homebrew. I like the idea of taking adventure paths because they have NPCs that are already created and magic items that are special to that adventure path and a story that I might get behind. And then I will just customize the heck out of it. So like for Stolen Fate, which I ran 2 books of, I didn't get to finish. There were scheduling conflicts with 2 of the players, and so I'm just like, that's half the group. I'm just gonna stop. And I as a Wiccan, I've done a lot of tarot readings, and it's based on the tarot, or the harrow in this case. And I also love using demons because it's sort of just an excuse to know who is evil. They're a perfect evil construct bad guy. That's who you attack now. It doesn't really matter what they say their reasons are. They are made of chaotic evil. And so it has a lot of demons. It has black magic. It has devils and the harrow in it. And that's a main focus. And so I took most of what's already there, and then I just kept peppering other stuff in that I also find passion for. So I guess that's how I usually handle an adventure path. I like them if it's a theme I already enjoy. you can really tell if I don't enjoy the adventure itself because I don't homebrew or customize because it's already too boring. I lose my drive for it. I'm like, yeah, this is Sundered Waves. You're on a beach. I don't know why you're here. There's a cave. I don't know why you'd go to it, but go to it.
I go to it. I have cave lore.
Oh, actually, I did throw something in at the beginning because it was the only place in the adventure I could. So I'm like, oh, and there's this weird nightmarish creature coming out of the waves. So that was fun. I'm not a fan of like H.P. Lovecraft, the dude, and I don't really
Yes.
know much of the Lovecraft mythos, but the elder monsters are fascinating to me because they are an exercise in insanity, and they're just fun to use. Like the Hound of Tindalos in Pathfinder 2. Are you familiar?
Just a little bit, but yes.
Well, it's from a Lovecraft book, and it is a creature that enforces time. And so if you're in any adventure that involves time, this hound comes from the future, like past when time ends, to the present, and it has a reaving aura. It unmakes reality around it because it's not supposed to be there. It's just such fun, weird stuff. And I think its head is made up of like 4 tentacles or something.
Of course it is. So, like, I have a similar experience. Like, I've never read any Lovecraft, but I got into the Lovecraft memes and then found out about Lovecraft the person and was like, oh, that takes a lot of the fun out of this.
It sours it.
Yeah.
I was so sad when I heard that. I'm like, no. In fact, I think I said aloud to my girlfriend, no, I like some of those stories.
Yeah, my daughter has a Cthulhu stuffy, and it's, you know.
Yeah. I didn't realize that his predilection for tentacle monsters is because he was afraid of the ocean.
Oh, is that all right? I didn't know that either.
You knew.
I just thought it was like undescribable must mean tentacles.
He was scared of anything from the sea.
Well, he really faced his fear then.
Is that how he died?
No, just like I know he wrote like
Oh my God.
stories about going out to sea and stuff.
I'm like, that's poetic justice at the end. Just his ship crashes.
Let's go back to wisdom check for a bit then. So what can people look forward to if they check out your channel in the next couple of months?
I'm going to be, well, okay. In every video, you can trust me to be honest and open about what I think and feel about everything I'm doing. If it's not for me, I'll clearly say so. And in the next, yes. And in the next couple months, I'll be releasing a class archetype for fighter with more to come, but I only know for certain that one is shaping up to be constructed relatively soon by the beginning of next month. I'm not certain when this video is coming out. At the beginning of October, it should be finished being constructed. And at that time, we're also going to have a one-shot that one of the players is playing that class archetype. So it's going to feature that class archetype. It's a fighter called the Rift Blade that's based on opening portals in combat and like reaching through and doing different things with it, or even teleporting short distances in combat. But also the planes are a feature of that class archetype. And so they open a small gate to the plane of fire, and a flame jet comes through and hits their enemies as their attack. So yeah, the theme is fun, but it's not just theme. The mechanics back it up. Beyond that, I am always going to be covering whatever new book comes out, the archetypes, and especially ancestries, with the exception of Jotunborn. I want to be clear, I did not cover that. I intend to, but
okay, I was going to say,
impressed.
I thought you had like some real problem with Jotunborn, so just not impressed. That's fine. I get not impressed.
Yeah, there basically just aren't enough feats for it. It doesn't have a specific rich flavor of its own.
I'm gonna have to disagree. I mentioned this in the Jason Keeley interview. I was just expecting the big beefy big beefy ancestry, and so then for it to have this like planar connection, and that there's a lot of like transportation involved in it, and a lot of the crafting with the weaving of the silk string. There was a lot more than I was expecting, and yet I can still just make a big beefy PC if I want to.
I should probably be more specific.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that I'm right in what I said, but more specifically, what I really look for in an ancestry is 1st level and 5th level feats. Okay. Beyond that, I largely don't care, because most people play 1st, 5th, maybe 10th, so they never get to 13th or 17th level feats. And I generally make all of my builds at 6th level so that I can prove the point that I can get to the flavor and intention of the build early.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
so if it's
I totally get that, and I did not look at it through that lens. So you might be right that it has like a curve where it gets really interesting later. I'm looking forward to, if you ever do release a video on your thoughts, to see how they compare to mine.
I do plan to. I just haven't yet. It wasn't a priority because, well, the necrologist was talked about a lot, and the captain was fascinating to me, and I still need to cover the others, like the commander, the reason the book came out, and the guardian. So I'm always going to be covering new archetypes, and I'm going to do occasional one-shots. I just finished a Vampire the Masquerade one-shot just to show people a different type of role-playing and storytelling. And so there's always going to be random stuff about role-playing tips and psychology usage in character creation on my channel.
What edition of Vampire are you playing?
Revised.
I don't know enough about Vampire to know which one that is, but okay.
I don't either, but technically it's called Revised. I think it's basically 2nd edition.
Okay.
So it's not the current version at all, but it's not the oldest. It's like 2 steps from the oldest.
So is there an end game for Wisdom Check? Is there somewhere you would love to see yourself? Oh, it's okay if there's not. I'm sorry. Okay. Watching
I
the
guess
existential crisis.
I guess I would like to know that a lot of people want to use what I've created. I think that's the bottom line, that I want to know that what I've been doing has a purpose and that people are being benefited from it. So I can't really say that that's a number or a destination or a date. I just want, I guess, more people to be part of the channel, to get benefit from what I've made and say, hey, this in particular is cool because I'm making this class, so this archetype works perfect for that. I just really love that feedback and that what I do can help more people.
I love that. All right, can you remind people where they can find you?
Okay, so
I should have told you ahead of time to get this prepared. I'm sorry, I'm springing it on you.
that's okay. What's the Etsy store name?
Oh, don't worry about Etsy because
I thought
that's
you were
not
asking
really
me.
part of the channel.
Okay.
So just Wisdom Check Creations.
Okay. So obviously Wisdom Check on YouTube and wisdomcheckcreations.com. On that website, it's a Wix website, so we've customized it a lot. I have a lot of builds, and I have basically the whole script from the video and step-by-step instructions and links to all of the feats and the class and everything in there, and the ancestries. So it's easier to build after you've watched the videos, or just go there and see if you'll like any of the builds. The laughing shadow was fun. Because it's, of course, the laughing shadow, but I had to make him insane so he laughed more, and the sneaky assassin so he's more shadowy.
Makes sense to me.
And I also, on Twitter, you can find me. You can find all the links on the YouTube channel and also on Wisdom Check Creations. And you'll see more builds coming up on Wisdom Check Creations soon. You haven't for a while, just due to personal health issues. I haven't been making as many builds, but they're my passion. So you're always going to be seeing more eventually. And also, just to make it really clear to people, you can join my Discord for whatever reason. But if you want to come to throw out ideas about a new character build you're considering, or if you're world building, there's a lot of people there, including myself, that help with world building. You might want to pay for Path Builder first because it's amazing. But if you want to get to my Discord, just go to YouTube, on YouTube, Wisdom Check. And all the links are there. Just click the Discord link. You'll automatically be approved. And you can talk about any kind of stuff you want, except politics, because we don't want to start fights. And everybody's welcome. There's a lot of people there that help with building characters, because there's just a lot of know-how.
All right, before we wrap anything up, is there anything you want to touch on that we haven't yet?
I do, just because, like, I feel like I'm...
Pitch it to me, and then I'll phrase it as a question, and I'll edit it in more smoothly.
Thank you. Okay, so I feel like I'm trying to make sales, but that's not the passion that I have. That is the reason I'm presenting this.
Okay.
My girlfriend makes dice. So this is an 80 millimeter liquid core D20.
Cool.
See all the sparkles inside?
I do.
It is filled with water and something.
They're
Magic.
holographic.
It's full of magic. And she just makes a lot of dice, and they're custom made. And this is my favorite because I use it for the loot's choice. It's a cookie jar. She just makes a lot of dice that are friggin' pretty and that I don't see anywhere else. Like, this is usually a decorative piece, but it's so sturdy that you can roll this just fine.
Well, and I see it's got a proper D20. Like, it's not a hit point counter like in Magic where things are in
Right.
like a numerical order. No, you can properly roll that. It's probably best if you have some kind of mat protecting the varnish of your table.
We send them out with it.
Oh, really? Oh, excellent.
You don't want to damage your table. I've actually damaged a glass table with one of these.
I believe it. Oh, man. So at Gen Con one time, I was invited to this really high-end game in this room that they rented with this antique table, and then everyone was provided with dice, and I was provided with a metal set. And I'm like, I destroy everything. And now you've given me metal dice on an antique table. Like, I was so nervous with every roll.
That was not wise.
It
You
was
should
not
have
well
done
thought
it.
out. I was using the little bag, and like, we're talking a little bag that came with the dice as my dice mat. And yeah, it was the gingerest I've ever rolled for a game because I had to. I did not want to be the guy that ruined that table.
Metal dice are so dangerous. I was given a steel D6 this big when I was playing Magic the Gathering when I was a teen. And that thing just destroyed everything it was rolled on. It was also really loud. So I used it for crits because it was funny. But other than that, nobody wanted me to roll it because it was always,
Jake, I'm really glad that we did this. I know before we were talking, you were like, why me? And it honestly just like you exude this honesty and this like passion for the game that I really connect with, that I really relate to. And you've delivered exactly what I was hoping to get out of this. So thank you so much for coming on here for this fireside chat.
I appreciate that because I don't know how to be something that's not me.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of No Direction. Now you know what to do. Like, subscribe, go to our Patreon page, give us money, go to our website, nodirectionpodcast.com, listen to our other podcasts, read our blogs, go to our Discord, join in, say hi. All that because if you want to find the path, you need no direction.